And lastly, going to the vitreous, and you described that as the clear fluid behind the eyeball?
Correct.
All right. And a service was conducted on the vitreous for propofol?
Yes.
And the results?
Was present less than 0.40 micrograms per milliliter.
And does that then conclude the findings as it relates to the biological testing of the specimens related to the decedent in this case?
Yes, it does.
And was a summary of the positive toxicology findings prepared by you as it relates to the findings you've just walked us through?
Yes, I prepared the summary report only because it's, rather than look at 8 pages of negative and positive results, it's much easier to assemble the positives all together to make it make sense, really.
And, Your Honor, I do have a 1-page summary of positive toxicology findings. May this be marked Peoples 169 for identification?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson, do you recognize this document, Peoples 169?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And again, does it bear your name as a supervising criminalist with the date of July 15, 2009?
Yes, it's the same date in which the 8-page report was dated and prepared.
And then if you could, I'd like you to just take us through these positive findings as reflected in this report, going by drug across the specimens and giving us the findings, please.
Propofol was measured in looks like 8 specimens. The first 3 of them are blood. The first one, 3.2 in the heart blood, 4.1 in the hospital blood.
And when it says 3.2, what unit of measurement are we using?
According to the chart, it's micrograms per milliliter.
Okay, so the first one, heart blood, is 3.2.
Correct. The hospital blood is 4.1.
Micrograms per milliliter?
Correct.
Next one?
2.6 micrograms per milliliter. The vitreous was less than 0.40 micrograms per milliliter. The liver had 6.2 micrograms per gram. The gastric contents or stomach contents, I think was stated in the 8-page report, is 0.13 milligrams. The autopsy urine had 0.15, and the scene urine had less than 0.10 micrograms per milliliter.
Going forward then with the positive findings as it relates to lidocaine?
Lidocaine was detected again as in the basis service, and it was quantitated in the heart blood at 0.68 micrograms per milliliter, 0.51 micrograms per mil in the hospital blood, 0.84 micrograms per milliliter in the femoral blood. We did not measure it in the vitreous. The liver specimen was 0.45 micrograms per gram. The total amount of lidocaine detected in the gastric contents was 1.6 milligrams. And then both urines, the autopsy urine and the scene urine, was recorded as present.
All right.
The
diazepam?
We get into some benzodiazepines now. Diazepam, which is Valium, was detected at less than 0.10 micrograms per milliliter. It was reported out as present in the hospital blood.
Well, the first reading is the heart blood?
Correct. I'm sorry. Yes, it is.
Okay, present in the hospital blood.
Present in the hospital blood, and we didn't do any further analysis on any other specimens. The metabolite of Valium or diazepam is nordiazepam, and it was detected at less than 0.05 micrograms per milliliter, measured only in the heart blood. The next benzodiazepine is the lorazepam or Ativan, was detected at 0.162 micrograms per milliliter, but in the 8-page report, it's actually listed as 162 nanograms per mil. It's just a simple conversion that I made for simplicity on this chart.
All right, and the next finding as it relates to lorazepam?
It's midazolam. Oh, I'm sorry. For lorazepam, it was also measured in the femoral blood at 0.169 micrograms per milliliter or 169 nanograms per mil.
Next, benzodiazepine?
It is also known as Versed, and it was measured at 0.0046, hence micrograms per milliliter, hence why the other report says 4.6 nanograms per mil. It's a conversion. It's much easier to say the nanograms than the micrograms.
And that's the midazolam in the heart blood.
Correct. And then we move on to urines. They were actually quantitated in the urine at 0.0068, and in the urine, or autopsy urine, and then the scene urine had 0.025 micrograms per mil, but if you transfer them, it's 6.8 and 25.
And lastly, as far as positive findings, you list ephedrine. Can you describe those results?
Because I detected the ephedrine in both the urines, the scene urine and the autopsy urine, I listed it as not detected in the heart blood, just so that there's no questions to be asked. You find it in the urine, you may want to make sure you backtrack into the bloodstream to make sure you can account for it, and it was not detected in the heart blood.
Thank you. And to be clear then, there were no positive test results in any specimen for Demerol in Michael Jackson's system.
That's correct.
And talking specifically about the gastric contents as it relates to propofol and lidocaine, the propofol being on top with the measurement of 0.13 milligrams in the gastric contents, visually, because this is an actual quantity of drug in the stomach contents, correct?
Correct.
It's not a concentration, it's actual, how would you describe it?
Well, the easiest thing to visualize is you go to restaurants, you have a sweet and low pack, or you have a sugar pack that you see commonly on the tables. Those are a gram packages. There are 1,000 milligrams in that package. So equating the 0.13 milligrams that I'm measuring of propofol in comparison to that sugar pack of 1,000 milligrams, talking at least 1,000, at least 100,000 million of it.
Okay, so the 0.13 milligrams is basically the equivalent of specks of sugar crystals from a 1 gram sugar packet you might see in a restaurant. Is that close enough?
To equate to that, yes.
And the lidocaine, which is listed at 1.6 milligrams in the gastric contents, again, going with your same analogy with a 1 gram sugar packet you might see on a restaurant table, how much is 1.6 milligrams?
Well, again, it's comparing to 1,000 milligrams as a sugar pack. It's very small. It's a little bit more than 1/1,000th.
Okay, slightly more than 1/1,000th of a single sugar pack.
That's correct.
May I have the lights, please, Your Honor?
Thank you. Mrs. Benson?
Sir, in addition to this biological testing that you've walked us through, were medical evidence items also tested by your laboratory?
Yes, it was.
And specifically, were there items referenced by your laboratory as medical evidence item 1 and 2, respectively?
Yes.
I want to ask you about medical evidence number 1, which was a 10 cc syringe with plunger, which has now been identified as People's 118 for identification.
Okay.
Was what is now identified as People's 118 for identification, coroner's evidence, medical evidence number 1, analyzed by your laboratory?
Yes, it was.
And what type of test was done on People's 118 as far as trying to obtain results to the contents of People's 118?
Basically, it's the evaluation of that syringe, descriptions describing how much we're actually removing volume-wise from the syringe itself, and then simply making what they call a dilute and shoot method, where you're taking a portion of the liquid that's in there and you put it into a little vial that's amendable to the instrument, and you shoot it on the instrument. And that's what it means by dilute and shoot. You're basically diluting up in a solvent that is good for the instrument, and you're introducing it onto that GCMS instrument.
And as it relates to People's 118, the syringe, which was previously identified as being found on the nightstand, what were the results of your lab's testing of that syringe?
Well, first we measured how much liquid was still remaining in that syringe, and it was measured at 0.19 grams of material.
0.19 grams?
Grams of liquid, and that would equate to actually almost 4 drops of liquid. Each drop is about 0.05 in volume, so it's about 4 drops of liquid. And we basically took a portion of it and introduced it onto an instrument, and we detected propofol and lidocaine.
Was testing also done on what the coroner booked in as medical evidence number 2, which is now broken down into People's 156, the saline bag, 157, the long tubing, 158, the Y connector and short tubing, and 159, the syringe with needle, and finally People's 160, the tip that had been cut off the end of the tubing. Those items collectively being 156, 157, 158, 159, and 160, were those analyzed by your laboratory and referenced by your laboratory as coroner's medical evidence number 2?
Yes, it was.
And was a diagram created that references the various items I've just identified?
Yes. I mean, during the examination, both myself as well as Jamie Lintemoot were present, and we actually evaluated the whole apparatus, how to approach it, how to test for it, and then at that time, Jamie was drawing a nice diagram to keep us straight.
Your Honor, I do have a diagram. It's on a Form 42 from the LA County Coroner's Office. May this be marked People's 170 for identification?
Yes.
Is this the diagram you just referenced, Mr. Anderson?
Yes, it is.
All right. And looking then at